Welcome to Dr. Lottie Science with Soul. I'm Dr. Lottie and the host of this podcast. I'm a physician, medical intuitive, evidential psychic medium, international keynote speaker, and author of Med School After Menopause, The Journey of My Soul, an inspirational story about transformation, healing, and spirituality, which won first place in the category of spiritual leadership in August 2021 from Living Now Book Awards. This award recognizes truly world-changing books that contribute to positive global change. The inspiration for this podcast came from my own life experiences. As I have journeyed through life, it has taught me that we're part of a greater divine web of interconnectedness. I have walked the path of illness, healing, and transformation. After 2 near-death experiences, I became clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient, and was guided to attend medical school at the age of 54. We will be meeting with many different types of doctors, healers, as well as spiritual leaders, educators, and other inspiring souls in this podcast. It is my hope that you will gain information and create a path to healing your own life physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and bridge the gap between science and soul. If you are a person who understands the interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul, and would like to take one of my courses or work with me to create a path of healing your own life, please visit divinespiritualessence.com or drlottie.com. To stay up to date on future episodes and to help us reach a larger audience, remember to subscribe, review, and share this podcast, as well as subscribing to my newsletter at divinespiritualessence.com. Welcome to Dr. Lottie Science with Soul. I'm Dr. Lottie and the host of this podcast. Today, I am really excited to introduce Emily Thiroux Threatt. Emily Thiroux Threatt is the author of Loving and Living Your Way Through Grief, a comprehensive guide to reclaiming and cultivating joy and carrying on in the face of loss. And she is the winner of the Bookauthority Best New Grief Book Award, and she also won the silver medal for the Living Now Book Awards. Emily has much experience in the grieving process, and she has learned to face life with love, optimism, and joy. Her mission is to comfort and support those dealing with grief and loss, focusing on happiness. So welcome, Emily. I'm really excited to have you as a guest today.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here. I love to talk about this stuff and help people along the way.
Yes, and I would guess that most of the listeners have experienced some form of grief one way or another during their life journey. So I can't wait to have you share the wisdom and talk about your book and give some great advice to all the listeners out there. So you recently won 2 awards, not one, but 2 awards for your book, Loving and Living Your Way Through Grief. So what led you to write this book?
I'm a writer to start off with. I have taught writing at the university level for over 30 years. And I have writing has been kind of my go-to thing to help me deal with life in general. I really love to write. And I'd written college textbooks before, so I know that I could easily write a book, but I hadn't really thought about it actually after my husband's died. I had 2 husbands die. And when the second one died, I was looking for what I was supposed to do now, because I'd been spending all my time with him and helping him and living in the moment, making the most out of the life that we had left. And I wasn't really sure what to do. So I turned to writing myself, and I wrote a lot just for me, not for a book or anything, but just exploring my thoughts and feelings and what do I want to do now? And I found the kinds of things that I was writing helped me so much. I thought I could help other people by teaching them those kinds of writing experiences. And we had moved to Maui 2 years before Ron died. We did that because he'd lived here many years before he knew me. And he just thought this would be where he wanted to spend the rest of his life. So that's what we did. And so I didn't get to meet a whole lot of people those first couple of years. I have wonderful neighbors, best I've had any place that I've lived. But I didn't know a whole lot of other people. And especially I didn't know anybody who had been dealing with loss. So I put a notice on a meetup group online where you can just invite people to come to something. And I invited them to come to my house and to write about grief and loss. And they showed up. It was really cool. I had a nice sized group, and we started out meeting once a month, but they liked it so much we changed it to twice a month. And we're going very well with that until the pandemic. And of course, that went online like everything else has. But in the process of doing all this, I found myself getting stronger and feeling like I was supporting these people and really helping. And then one of Ron's really good friends just dropped dead. And no warning, he wasn't sick. Nothing was happening that anybody would know would cause it. And I was very concerned for his wife because they were a lot younger than Ron and I. We were family friends, and he called Ron Dad. That's how big of an age difference there was. And I thought his wife's just not going to know what to do or think or what she needs to worry about or not worry about. So I wrote her a letter that said the things that I thought that she did need to worry about right then, and the things that she didn't need to pay any attention to at that point. And she let me know that that letter helped her more than anything else because nobody else talked about things like that. That most of them said things like, "I'm sorry for your loss," which is not a very helpful statement. So I thought I need to do more than that. So I made a commitment to myself to write her a card every week for the first year after her husband died and talk about something different that she'd be dealing with through that first year each time. So before I started to write them, I thought I better make sure I've got 52 things that I can talk about. So I made a list, and I did. And I wrote out what I was going to say in each one of them before I started. And writing those helped me a lot. But I realized after I wrote them that I had an outline for a book, because it wasn't what my intention was, but that's what came out of it. So I got an agent and got a publisher and wrote the book, and it came out in January. So that's what caused me to write the book.
That's a wonderful story, and how you were really just being compassionate from your heart space and doing all these wonderful things. And out of that, it became a whole book for all the other people to be helped too. So such a great story of just following that inspiration in your own heart, and what can come out from that by just being your true self. That's just wonderful. So what are the different types? So we're talking about the loss of life, grief. But there are other types of grief too that people can experience. Can you talk a little bit about other types of grief?
Yeah, there's so many things. We've all experienced loss. You might think, "Oh, well, I'm not grieving," but if you really think about it, you've probably experienced more than one type of loss. And that can be anything from your beloved pet died, or one of the people in my group lost her home, which also had her husband's business and all their animals in it, in one of the fires in California. And we've had so many fires and so many losses through that lately that's significant. And right now we're dealing with losses from floods and hurricanes and everything else. And you can lose neighborhoods, you can lose friends because they have to move away because of the situation. There's lots of different kinds of loss. And it's important to deal with each of them and not just kind of blow it off and think, well, that just happened and I'll just go on with life, because it kind of stays with you if you don't let it out and find your way through it.
You were mentioning earlier that sometimes people say, "I'm so sorry for your loss," and then it sort of ends there. How can people help other people when they know that maybe a family member passed away, and now that people feel in a way awkward and not really sure how to support that person who lost a family member. What should I say? What should I do? How can I show up for this person? What would your advice be?
Well, first, I'd like to mention what bothers me about I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
Besides the fact that I heard it over and over and over again, I can't think of something else to say. But it's become like, have a nice day, or how are you? People say those things, but they don't expect an answer. They feel obligated to say something to honor your situation, but then they want to move on to the next subject real quick. And I also would like to say, when I've said things about not appreciating that being said very much, I know sometimes that people are doing the very best they can. They want to do something. They mean no harm by saying, I'm sorry for your loss. They just aren't really sure what else to say. And what I can tell you to say is, when it's dealing with the loss of a loved one, a person, even if they moved away or got divorced or something, mention the person's name. That means a lot. I know it used to really touch me when my mom and dad had been married over 50 years, and they both have been gone quite a while now. But people would say things like, I remember how every time I saw your mom and dad walking, they were holding hands. And I just thought, after being married all those years, that was just so romantic. Well, a comment like that makes you smile, and it makes you feel good. It brings back happy memories. And with my husband's, Jacques had a beautiful singing voice, and people would say, I always, when I heard Jacques was going to sing someplace, I was there because I really wanted to listen. And I could even hear him sing when somebody would say something like that. And Ron was amazing at helping people, even through really big challenges. And quite a few people said, I just don't know what I would have done without him, that he really changed my life and he made it so much better. Saying something like that, that's personalized, that addresses your relationship with whoever it is or whatever kind of loss you're dealing with, means so much more. And it's something that can help the person feel good, instead of remembering that they are dealing with loss and maybe having some tears when they don't want to.
Mm-hmm. And people grieve, when they lose family members, and that grieving process can look so different for different people. Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice on, sometimes people think, oh, it's been 2 weeks, they should be over this now, or it's been 3 months, they should be over this now. What advice do you have about that, the length of the grieving process and how long it can take for people?
Well, my belief is that you will love the person that you're grieving probably for the rest of your life. That just because you're not, like, for instance, when Ron died, it was a while before I met, not Ron, when Jacques died, it was a while before I met Ron. And I never felt unmarried from Jacques, because we didn't get divorced. We didn't voluntarily separate in any way. And when I met Ron, it was fine to hang out and do things with him, but I wasn't ready to, and he had talked about marriage a long time before I did. And I just said, I finally told him, I just don't feel like I'm unmarried. I need to figure this out. And he actually helped me through it. So I kind of lost my train of thought. I get to thinking about them and how wonderful they were.
Yeah. And how long that grieving
how long
process
lasts. Thank you very much. So even though I was married to Ron, I still had Jacques in my heart. I still have both of them in my heart now. We were just talking about my name, that I've kept both of my last names I had with both of those marriages, because I loved them both. And it's kind of my way of honoring them and remembering them always, how special they are for me. And I still love my parents. They've been gone a very long time, but that doesn't mean that I don't carry love for them. So I think that as long as you still feel that you love someone who's gone, you're still grieving them, but it's a different different phases of grief. All grief isn't that heart-wrenching, hard to breathe, unable to sleep, all that sort of thing that happens right at the beginning. It doesn't stay that way forever, but it will be what it needs to be as you move along. And the important thing to remember when that's going on is to take really good care of yourself, because it's not unusual for people who are dealing with loss to kind of lose themselves in the process and forget that they are still alive, and they do need to eat well, they do need to exercise, they do need to be with friends when they can, they do need to smile. Smiling is really, really important. It really does make you feel better when you can smile.
That is great advice. And I know you talked about that for you. It was a lot about writing.
Mhm.
What advice would you give to people who are going through grieving right now, besides taking care of themselves and, remembering to smile and all those things? How can they, relieve themselves of that grief?
I'm not sure I'd say relief from grief. It's more of handle grief. Handle it with loving
Yes.
care.
Mm-hmm.
It's a part of life, and we can't just take out the parts of life we don't want to experience. It's
Right.
there.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you still get to go through it one way or the other, and you can do lots of different things. I one example I like to use is my aunt. I love this lady. She was a marvelous woman. And she and her husband were in a very bad car accident where her husband was killed and she was almost killed, very close to it, and had a long recovery period. And when I was visiting her, after she got home from the hospital, she still had a hospital bed in her living room. And I saw, it was back when they had the tapes instead of DVDs to watch
Right.
movies on. And I saw the box for Patch Adams, and I said, "Oh, that's a good movie." And she said, I watch it all the time. She said, "I watch it because it's so heartwarming. You can't help but laugh. He says so much good stuff in it." And it just made her feel good. So she found something that if she started getting down, she knew that was going to bring her back up. So she'd do that. I know other people will listen to music. There's so many different kinds of music. Jacques very much liked Baroque music, and Ron very much liked jazz. They liked a lot of other music too, but those were their primary likes. So when I'm thinking about Jacques, I'll put on some Bach, because I absolutely love Bach, and kind of have that running in the background when I'm doing anything else. Or I'll put some soft jazz on that, again, I can run in the background. Like if I'm working on something that I'm not having to, that I can have the music and it's not going to be distracting. It's nice to have that. And I usually choose things that don't have words so that I'm not singing along with them, which distracts me from what I am doing. But it makes things more pleasant. It makes me be able to feel like I can breathe, especially if I start getting uptight. Also do things like meditate. That always helps. I find focusing on my breathing helps me kind of most of all, because you can do that anytime, any place. If you start to get upset or uptight, if you kind of put your hand on your stomach and take a big belly breath where you feel your stomach move by your deep breath, and do it slowly, breathe in slowly and breathe out slowly, and maybe do that like 3 times, and it kind of resets your body and resets your mind. So you can go, okay, I'm centered back and I can keep moving forward right now and concentrate on what I need to concentrate at this moment.
And this writing group that you talked about that then went online, is that something that people can join, your writing groups?
Yes, I have two different things now. Actually, I have a writing group that meets on every Saturday. It's morning in Hawaii. It's probably other times for everybody else because we're kind of behind the rest of the mainland. But we get together for an hour, and every week I give them a different topic to write on, and they write for, depending on how many people are there and how long we talked before we get started, it's between 15 and 20 minutes. They'll write on whatever it is. And then we talk about it afterwards. Sometimes somebody will write something they really want to just read what they wrote, and that's fine. Or they want to talk about what it made them think about as they were writing that, or how it helped them by writing that. And the conversations are really good. Yet we keep this whole process in an hour time slot, because then you don't get overwhelmed with it. And if you are liking the subject, you can always write on it in your journal later on during the week. But we've had lots of discoveries when we write that way, when people are writing together. And from that, I'm also a certified Happy for No Reason trainer by Marcy Shimoff, who wrote the book Happy for No Reason. And she was spreading her happiness practices all over the world, but she's been doing a lot for a long time, and she wanted help. So she developed a program so she could have people help. And she teaches the people who become trainers all of her practices, and then lets them take them into whatever they're doing that they can help with. And I thought, this is so perfect for grief, to have these concrete practices, things that you can actually do for happiness. So, and the other thing that seemed to be missing is people being able to just talk to each other when they're dealing with somebody else that is also dealing with loss. So I created something called the Grief and Happiness Alliance. And they meet once, or will meet, it's starting November 14th. They will meet once a week, and they will do all three of those things. We'll do a writing thing, we'll talk about it, we'll do a happiness practice, and we'll meet in breakout groups, because it'll be done on Zoom. And the groups are small, so you get to meet different people all the time, and you get to have conversations with them. And it's really good. And I'm saying this from a experience, because I set up a pilot group for it to make sure that it was logical and that it worked for people. And it was so interesting, because I invited people to be in this pilot program that I knew from around the country. And they all, everybody that I asked said yes, and every one of them showed up. And I've never done anything like that before, where people say, oh yeah, I'll be there, and then they don't. But they all showed up. They went through the whole pilot program. And at the end, we were talking about how much to charge for the program. And I said, I expressed to them that I was kind of hesitant, because I felt like the people needed this information just to live their best lives, that they didn't necessarily have to pay for it. But I wanted them to see the value in it. And so the group came up with the idea of creating a nonprofit organization that would pay for all the expenses of doing the alliance, and then let the people that are coming to the alliance know that it's through the generosity of people who believe in what we're doing there that we're able to offer this program for no charge to people who are dealing with loss. So that's my big exciting thing that I'm doing right now. I just love that. And I also just launched my own podcast. So I'm trying to work however I can in a way to talk to people about how they can grieve and be happy at the same time, and they can do something about their grief, so they don't have to just sit there and not know what to do.
Yes. It's just amazing. It's so needed in the world, and we're becoming more and more isolated the way we live, and we're typically not living close to our family for support. And when things happen and people are grieving, they're often very alone, and it's so needed what you're doing, and creating that community for people to have an outlet, and also to gain support from other people. So when they come to that, to the writing program, which is on was Saturday mornings.
Mhm.
Do you tell them a specific topic to write on,
Mhm.
or for each time there is something that you suggest they write on?
Yes, every time there's something. And I kind of hesitate to say this, but what I do is I know that whatever they're supposed to write about will come to me that morning. When I first was doing it, I'd have a list of, okay, we can do all these topics, and I would just pick one out. But I discovered that when it came right down to it, we get close to the class time and something would happen, and it's like, that's what we need to write about today. And it's just worked out beautifully that way, because then they can tie it into life in general, and it really helps. We had one of the people who was a devoted member of the group and a great writer, and she was very supportive of everybody else, and she was in the pilot program for the Grief and Happiness Alliance. And she was just great. And the last pilot program meeting, at the end of the meeting, she just spoke out that, it wasn't like she asked the speaker something. She just said, this is an idea whose time has come and it needs to happen. And she spoke a little more on that, and it was just beautiful, and it was so well received, and everybody was emotional by the end of it. And 2 days later, she died. So our next meeting, when not all the people that are in the writing group were in the pilot program, but there were people in both places, and the people in the writing group knew her well from being with her for quite a while. So the next time we wrote a letter to her, and each person wrote their own letter from their own perspective, and were able to express all the things that they wanted to, because they didn't necessarily get to talk to her because nobody knew she was going to die right then. And it was really powerful. And I'm glad that we had the inspiration to do something like that, and it served everybody in the group. So you never know what's going to come up right then, but whatever it is, and it's different every time. We don't write on the same topics because you don't need to. There's a million things in the world to talk about, and I think it's more interesting to write on something different every time.
Yes, it sounds so great. Such a great opportunity for people to join that group. And I know your book talks about 26 different types of practices and stories of grieving. Is there any particular story or practice that you would like to share?
Well, each chapter is kind of on a different topic. And so whatever the practice at the end of it has to do with that topic. And one of my favorite ones that helped me so much when I was first starting to think about what I could do to take care of myself after Jacques died was gratitude. Now, I know you hear gratitude all over the place now, that it's become kind of like, how are you, or have a nice day. But when you really take it seriously, it means a lot. I know when I started writing gratitude lists, I thought I didn't have anything to write about because my husband died. I'm not grateful. So I thought I have to get beyond that. So I started realizing that the things that were really good and wonderful in my life. I had a home. I was able to go back to the job that I had left because of all the circumstances, and they invited me to come back. And when they invited me to come back, I came back with insurance, which was important because my husband had been providing the insurance, and when he was gone, I didn't have insurance anymore. So I kept finding things when I looked around like that. Excuse me. I would look at things that I was happy about. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I would let a sip of water.
Yeah. So I found more and more things. So I wrote this chapter on gratitude with a lot of information in it. And of course, at the end, the exercise is writing a gratitude list. And I can tell you that I started my gratitude list with 3 things a day that I'd write, and it kept getting longer and longer and longer. And I still, all these years later, I'm still writing down 3 things every day that I'm grateful for. And I don't repeat myself very much. Sometimes I do, because there's something I'm just, really especially grateful for. And it's okay to write about it twice. And I don't just write, I'm grateful for the blue skies. I write why I'm grateful for the blue skies, what that means to me. And that really helps the gratitude provide meaning for you. And when you realize how many things there really are to be grateful for in life, and how good it can make you feel, then you can't help but feel better. And if you start to get bummed out on something, just get out your gratitude journal and write down a few more things, and it'll bring you up out of that funk.
That's just lovely. And you have 26 practices and stories, so you can get through almost the whole year, at least half the year, depending on
do one every 2 weeks.
Right. Which is great. And you can also go back and revisit those different practices, and even rereading stories that are inspiring or helpful, wherever you're at that moment. Because as we go through this process, there's so many steps, and then we fall back to where we were, and then we skip 2 steps ahead, and it is a constant mulling around of the thoughts and putting them in its right place. So how can people find your book?
My book's available any place books are sold, because it was traditionally published. So you can get it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, but you can also get it from any of the independent book publishers too. And it's also in a Kindle version and in audio version. So any way that you can get books, they're there for you. Mm-hmm. So, and I have a website that's the name of my book. It's lovingandlivingyourwaythroughgrief.com. Lots more information there. And my email is the same as the book too. It's also Emily@lovingandlivingyourwaythroughgrief.com. And if you want to join that writing group, just let me know, and I'll put you on the list where I'll send out the Zoom link to the people that are coming. Or if you want to be in the Grief and Happiness Alliance, let me know that too, and I'll put you on that list so that you'll get the invitation to that when the Zoom link comes out for that.
So if people go to your website, lovingandlivingyourwaythroughgrief.com, there is a way they can sign up through that website, or contact you through email?
They both. Okay. When you go to that website, there's a little pop-up that comes up and says, if you'd like a free preview of the book, just sign your name and your email, and I'll get it that way. But if you want to specifically be in the writing group or join the Grief and Happiness Alliance, just email me and there's just hit connect on my website, and you can get there, or mail it to Emily@lovingandlivingyourwaythroughgrief.com, and I'll get it that way too.
So all your listeners out there, go check out her book, Loving and Living Your Way Through Grief, a comprehensive guide to reclaiming and cultivating joy and carrying on in the face of loss. So I want to thank you so much, Emily, for being our guest today and sharing your wisdom of grief with all the listeners around the world.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Dr. Lottie, Science with Soul. To stay up to date on future episodes and to help us reach a larger audience, remember to subscribe, review, and share this podcast, as well as subscribing to my newsletter at divinespiritualessence.com. If you are a person who understands the interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul, and would like to take one of my courses or work with me to create a path of healing your own life, please visit divinespiritualessence.com or drlottie.com. My book, Med School After Menopause, The Journey of My Soul, an inspirational story about transformation, healing, and spirituality, which won first place in the category of spiritual leadership in August 2021 from Living Now Book Awards, is available online at Amazon as well as other online platforms worldwide. If you are a person who understands the interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul, and would like to take one of my courses or work with me to create a path of healing your own life, please visit divinespiritualessence.com or drlottie.com.